Dear security guards of Reddit, what was the most fucked up thing you've ever saw on your shift? I've worked security for the past 30 years, from working on the doors for clubs to hotel security, but nothing quite stuck with me like this did. It was my second security job. I was working at a big hotel in London. I had the graveyard shift, so it was usually super calm. Most shifts I was paid to watch movies and scroll through my phone. This one night, however, was very different. About an hour into my shift, I got a call from reception to say there was an extremely distressed man telling them he was about to be killed and a gang was after him. He spoke very limited English, so reception was struggling to fully understand the issue. I checked the cameras and could see the man reaching over the desk trying to grab for the phone, so I rushed down from my office. When I got down, I took the man into a side room and tried to get him to explain the situation. He begged me to call the police, saying a gang had been following him and they were going to chop him into pieces and kill him. He was extremely scared. I left him in the room and phoned the police. They arrived and talked to the man, and supposedly sorted out the issue. They checked him into a room at the hotel and said they would be back in the morning to interview and discover what has happened. I took the man up to his room and left him there. The man stayed in his room all night and no one bothered him. It was about 30 minutes before my shift finished, so I thought I would go knock on his room to make sure he was okay before I left. I got to his room and knocked on his door. No answer. I knocked again hard and shouted security. No answer. I was worried for his safety, so unlocked the door and shouted in. Still no answer. I entered the room. It was completely empty. Then suddenly I get a call from reception. The girl was crying her eyes out, shouting for me to get down immediately. Dear security guards of Reddit, what was the most fucked up thing you've ever saw on your shift? I ran down the stairs as quick as I could. When I got to the bottom, I could see the man stood in the middle of the hotel lobby carrying a fire extinguisher covered in blood. He was also covered in blood but looked to have no injuries. There was a trail of blood splats leading from him to the first lift. I immediately radioed into the police as an emergency. I kept my distance but shouted at the man to explain what had happened. He told me they had come for him and he had to defend himself. The police soon arrived. As soon as they did, the man surrendered himself and he was handcuffed and put into a police van. It was now safe for me to cross over the lobby, so I went and had a look inside the lift. Inside were two men. Their faces so damaged they barely looked human. The lift was covered in blood, as if it had been painted red. It was an awful sight. He had hit them so hard with the extinguisher he had caved their faces in. The worst part, the two men had nothing to do with any gangs. They were regulars at the hotel, who I got to know quite well. They both had kids and families. They were staying over this night to visit a famous art gallery. I never found out what happened to the man who killed them.
It is a secret that you will never tell anyone. One Christmas I was 9 years old and knew that Santa wasn't real, but for my 7-year-old brother the fantasy was very much alive and good. We shared a room and my brother woke up on Christmas morning and looked confused that Santa had not eaten the Kit Kat that had been left out. He went quiet and I could see that he was working the facts through in his head. When he wasn't looking, I ate the Kit Kat and showed him the wrapper and claimed he imagined seeing the wrapper unopened. This was 26 years ago and I have not told him in case he works out Santa is not real. When I was in elementary school, I once lost something, so I asked to go to the Lost and Found. In the Lost and Found room, which was a big storage closet, they also stored the Cokes for the pop machines. I took one. Then, probably 3 to 4 times a week, I'd remember I lost something else and go steal another Coke. I don't know how long I did this for, but I got a lot of free Coke. When I was in 4th grade, I put mustard in one of my friend's burger because he had told me that he hated mustard. Turns out he was actually allergic. He didn't come to school for 3 days and I was scared that I killed him. To this date no one knows that I did it. When I was about 7 years old, my dad took me to Blockbuster and I really had to pee. Blockbuster didn't have a restroom, so I peed in one of the aisles. I'm pretty sure the cameras saw me, but thankfully there was no one near me. When I was in 4th grade, my best friend put mustard in my sandwich. He didn't know I was allergic to it. I almost died and my parents wanted to find out who put the mustard to teach that kid a lesson. I knew it was my best friend, but I never told anyone. People who came close to dying. What were your last thoughts? I was stabbed in the neck by someone robbing my house. I totally thought I was going to die. I hate myself, but I begged the guy who stabbed me to stay because I didn't want to die alone. He said sorry and walked away. That effing broke my heart. Thankfully he called 911 for me. I was in a fight and I didn't know I was stabbed in the liver and the lung. I walked away with my friend and collapsed in an alley. I remember bleeding out with calming waves of euphoria washing over me and I thought, I've lived enough. I'm okay with this. I blacked out and woke up in the back of an ambulance with waves of immense pain assaulting my body. Dying isn't awful. Surviving is awful. I thought I was having a DRG overdose. I just remember thinking how disappointed my mom was going to be with me. Was run over by a bus last year. My thought when I went under the tires was, but it's a Wednesday. I pictured my husband coming home to an empty house and I desperately hoped people would reach out and make sure he was okay. Couldn't stand the thought of him being alone. Pictures of Reddit. What's the saddest thing you've ever found out about a student? That the reason that my grade 12 student was falling asleep during math class was because he was working 40 hours a week to pay his parents' bills. I saw his pay stub. He was a great kid too. When I taught second grade, I had a student who walked kinda funny. It took me about a week to realize that it was because his shoes were too small. I got him some new shoes at Kmart because kids' shoes are cheap. I told him it was so he would be able to run really fast in gym class. I found out he was living with his grandma because his dad was in prison for killing his mom. I started buying him clothes after that. At the end of the school year, I was packing up some boxes and one of them said snacks. The boy looked at me with great big eyes and asked if I really had snakes in the box. I cried over the fact that I promoted a kid to third grade who really couldn't read. I had a very smart kid failing my class because he wasn't turning in any homework. When I asked him why, he told me he lived in a hotel room with 12 other people. There wasn't space and it was too loud for him to focus. With street smarts, what is your most street tip? Trust your gut. You see people acting normally your whole life. You know what it looks like. If you see something that makes you uncomfortable, there's a reason, even if you don't know what it is yet. Never talk money on public transportation, and never count money in a parking lot. Look both ways crossing a one-way street. There may always be one idiot. Act like you're in a hurry and less people will want to bother you. If you're in an argument with somebody and they get in your face and then look away, there's a good chance they're about to try and knock your head off. You don't owe anybody anything, including conversation. People who want to take advantage of you will usually start by initiating unsolicited conversation.